Is Prince Harry ever going to address the African Parks scandal? This has been floating around for months at this point, but Prince Harry just doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. I think we got some sort of vague statement about the scandal surrounding African parks and its guards abusing the Baka people. But we never gotten anything definitive about what's going on within this investigation, what changes might be made, and how really African parks is securing their parks. So when it comes to Prince Harry, who sits on the board of the African parks, he does somewhat have an obligation to publicly be acknowledging and trying to investigate these allegations because Prince Harry is all about Africa. His heart is in Africa. Him and Meghan are going to Nigeria very soon, but it just doesn't seem like he has really put any emphasis on this investigation or what is going on or what the truth is going on within African parks. And I think I have some idea of why that might be, in addition to why the news media, you could say, isn't covering this situation as hard as it should be. Because I get a lot of comments both on Twitter and on these videos going, when is Harry going to address this? And why isn't the news media holding him to account? Well, again, I will explain to you guys why I think that is and what is going on within this news story because it is very important and actually does have a lot of ties to colonialism. But at the same time, I think there are limitations to the situation. So we will go over this today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide y'all compelling royal commentary about the latest news, sometimes the drama going on behind the scenes. And we've just hit 149,000. If we could hit 150 by the end of this week, I realize that's soon. That would be awesome. I will also have the Crown Report out tomorrow. That is the plan. I'm so excited. Hopefully getting it sort of launching on the time I wanted to. I am so excited about it, you guys. There are so many great royal news stories. The Crown Report, if you don't know, is a podcast I've been working on and tweaking and everything that goes over all sort of the major royal news stories of the week, offer some commentary, some insights. And so, guys, I am so excited for you all to see the latest episode. So again, if you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. And then I will let you guys know as well when the Crown Report comes out. It'll be under podcasts for this channel. And I'm super excited because Ana Lucia and I are doing a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, and we are giving away a ring. And Ana Lucia offered me one. So if you purchase this particular ring, 5% of the proceeds from myself and Ana Lucia go to support the American Cancer Society. So I have not seen this yet. It was delivered today. I may have peeked, but let's look. It's the Royal Lucky Star. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Okay, no, I have to do this. Oh, and I can see it. Oh, there. Oh, just there we go. Isn't that gorgeous? So we got diamonds here. It is gold. I asked for gold because I have 2 silver rings, but I thought, ooh, I would like a gold one, and gold is so pretty. Oh, and so guys, like I said, if you want to see it right here, it looks amazing. And so 5% of the proceeds for this ring, if you purchase it with code ROYAL20, go to support the American Cancer Society, and we will put in a donation on behalf of Catherine. So if you guys are interested, I will have a link up above and put the code down below. It's just simply Royal20 for 20% off, and we also still donate. So guys, I am so excited for you guys to see this, and I'm so excited to get mine. It's going to be awesome. I love it. I love stars. So we got some pave diamonds, some gold, looking mighty sharp today. All right, guys. So back to this story, because this story has a lot of facets, has a lot of moving parts, and it's also very, very tricky. And the reason is it's not maybe necessarily the reason that you think, because obviously some people I think are insinuating that the media, oh, they're protecting Harry and this story. And that's really not the case. It's really not the case at all. I don't think anybody necessarily is trying to, I mean, obviously he has PR and they're doing their thing. But I don't think in this situation, the press is really trying to protect Harry, who is, of course, on the board of African parks. And the reason is, and I just wanted to start with this because I think this is incredibly important to understand, is that this region is exceptionally remote. Okay, guys, so we're looking here at a map of Africa. You have obviously the Sahara up here. We have the sub-Saharan down here, South Africa and everything. So the best I can figure, because there's really not even any big cities around this region, is that the Baka people live somewhere throughout these regions. So they're part of the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. You have the Republic of the Congo. Central African Republic has been mentioned, as well as Cameroon. So you were looking at a region, I think somewhere around here with this particular jungle. And as you can tell when you get in close, obviously the Google images aren't very good. And the reason is that this is just pure unadulterated jungle. And there's just not a ton there in terms of infrastructure. It's a little bit better down here. Obviously, the river here sort of differentiates between the two countries. But when you get to some of these more rural regions, there's just not a lot of infrastructure there. Oh, those pictures got better than I thought they would. But it's all basically jungle. You're looking at a lot of jungle, really, really remote regions. The DRC is known for being very, very remote, very difficult to access certain areas. And because of that, the parks in this situation, African parks, makes it really hard for other journalists to verify this story because you have to get into the country, which can be challenging. You usually require guards, and then you have to get to wherever this region is. And I'll look it up again so I can make sure I got it. But it's just incredibly challenging to get to some of these places. Again, there is no infrastructure. There's no hotels sometimes. You have to travel by boat, sometimes by foot. Sometimes there's no roads, no airplanes, helicopters won't work. There's just so many things here that prevent people from getting into these regions. And because of that, it's really hard for any, let's say, the Times of London, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, to send journalists out here to do any research because you need translators, you need guides just to get basically around. You probably need security. You probably need so many different things that you would not normally need to verify a story, let's say in Spain. Let's say there was a scandal regarding Prince Harry in Spain. Telegraph, Times, Daily Mail, CNN, all the big news outlets would be over there trying to cover it. But because of where this story is, it lives in a world that's just very, very hard for people to get to. And because of that, there's just not a good way to investigate this story. I just want to make that clear because I think sometimes people don't quite understand that. To send a journalist out here, which would be so much more expensive than sending them even to some place like, Nairobi, Cape Town. Sorry, I'm thinking I don't know my African capitals. So if even they just went to a simple capital region, that would be better. But the DRC, especially this region, guys, is exceptionally underdeveloped. Exceptionally underdeveloped. I mean, the only place I can think the most probably underdeveloped place within Africa, I would say, is probably the South Sudan area. The new country, highly, highly, highly unstable. And so it's obviously a little bit out of the way, but these regions as well, so many different, I know the DRC especially, it is quite a large country in a lot of ways, but I mean, I would imagine the control of the government extends to a couple key cities and that's about it. Because the rest of it is too lawless to govern because it's just so stinking hard to get around. And I think sometimes people don't necessarily appreciate those sorts of things. These regions are wild in a lot of ways. They're very wild. There are different factions ruling different areas and stuff. And there's just not even a lot of news that gets out around these areas, to be quite honest. Occasionally, maybe if things get pretty bad, you might hear about, let's say, a guerrilla group in the DRC. You might hear about it. You hear sometimes about the Central African Republic. I think they've had trouble with ISIS, I think, or something. They've had some insurgency and those sorts of things. I haven't heard a lot about Cameroon or Republic, but this area, and especially this country, highly, highly, highly unstable, highly, highly, I would say, dispersed. And again, there's not really a good, strong central authority because they just really can't be. So this whole story is difficult, again, to verify. It's difficult for any journalist because you have to get in there, number one. I think, is this the capital? Kinsengi might be the capital city here. I'm just curious if we can. So yeah, you have all the homes you can tell are surrounded by tall walls. I've actually been to Africa and I'll share a little bit about that myself as well. So you have some places where, yes, there is some control, but you're really talking about a lot of really, really lawless zones and areas. As far as I could tell, there wasn't even really a city to like Google Map. And so here we found, this is just random because I just think it's important. This is just some sort of little village in the middle of the DRC. And so there's a road to get there, but I don't know how long it would take because you got to think too, these won't be straight shot situations. These will be dirt roads. They'll be long, they'll be way out of the way for a lot of people and stuff. And so it's just very, very hard to get anybody there. And that is why nobody is covering this. That is just a simple logistical truth. It's hard to cover. You have to find somebody who speaks that particular tribe's language because even African parks in this situation were like, oh, we're going to find an anthropologist that studies the Baka people. And I'm like, that's probably what, one or two people in the world, maybe, just because there's so many different tribes here. I mean, there's an endless number of tribes. So you have to find the right person who studies that particular tribe. And those numbers those get very, very small very, very fast. So I should say as a disclaimer, the African Park says they are trying to address this situation. But the hard thing too is there's no way really for the international press, except for again, a very few number of people to even verify that that is happening or that that can happen. Because again, when they were said an anthropologist for the Baka people, I'm like, there is one? I know that sounds so bad, I'm sure, to some people in a lot of ways, but that is the truth. That is the truth of this matter, is that this is going to be very, very hard to verify. And so because of that, a lot of mainstream medias just simply aren't going to cover it. But that doesn't mean there aren't people trying to do their part. And so this is from the Times of London. And so pressure on Prince Harry after new torture claims hit African charity. And so this is from a Dutch journalist. And this came out on Friday, April 19th. So this was a couple weeks ago now, but I still think it has a couple of things that we can definitely look at. And so one of the things is, the Duke, he is facing pressure from this. And the African Conservation Charity, after new allegations of abuse carried out by armed rangers emerged, including the use of a torture method known as the swing. First-hand testimonies about the allegedly brutality meted out by staff managed and paid by African Parks appear in a new book based on a 3-year investigation into the organization, which is funded by British aid, celebrities, and American billionaires. So this is talking about African Parks. Entrepreneurs in the Wild by Olivier van Biemen includes dozens of incidents of alleged abuse from interviews conducted with victims and those who claim to have perpetrated the abuse, including existing and former African Parks staff. So the bad thing, though, is that obviously this guy had the time to do this investigation, but the book is going to be in Dutch. So I know that says that somewhere down here. This is interesting, though. I forgot this. After the prince's acrimonious split from the royal family, Van Biemen was told that senior figures at African Parks debated whether he remained a useful connection. Didn't these controversies surrounding the prince pose a risk to the organization? Was the question that triggered the discussion, a source told the author. So he is doing this investigation. So yeah, the book written in Dutch and published by Prometheus Amsterdam is the result of a 3-year investigation by Van Biemen. But I think this is really important what he's doing because a lot of times with these people like Prince Harry or others who have this I think their heart is in the right place in a lot of ways. I think they do have a very, very romanticized vision of Africa, one that does exist and yet also does not exist. And so I think that is where Harry is here because I think he's not putting the pedal to the metal maybe as much as he should be because he really doesn't even connect what's going on with what he thinks in some ways. So it says the author raises a troubling picture of an ambitious foreign-funded charity deploying well-armed rangers with the agreement of African governments to forcibly disrupt the age-old traditions of local communities in an area comparable to the size of Britain. Foster Kalumga, who was an African Parks Ranger in Zambia for 5 years until 2022, claimed he and colleagues used beatings and torture method known as the swing to extract information from suspected poachers in Luwana Plain National Park. Now, this is important because obviously people do use and abuse and access these parks for dangerous purposes. But at the same time, too, the local communities are there as well, and they have ancient traditions that have been going on for centuries and how they've lived connected to these regions. And so there is, you could say, a very colonial aspect to it in some ways, which I hate to use that term because I think it's overused by so many people, that they want to help so bad, they're almost being disruptive because they're trying to come and force their vision of what they want for a particular region. And a lot of African countries, again, sometimes they don't have particular controls over certain areas of the country. And so they're like, sure, if you want to do it, go right ahead. Because we got this guerrilla group over here and they're giving us headaches. But if you want to guard the parks, you got the infrastructure, the resources, the money to do it, yeah, we'll let you. And I know when the original report came out, there were a lot of indications that the African parks, the people who were running it, facilitated basically hunts that were monitored and controlled in various ways to the wealthy patrons of the charity. So again, there's sort of a interesting dynamic going on here. The African parks claimed, I won't read all of it just because I could get demonetized. But African Parts claimed that Kalunga had been discharged for gross misconduct and said that they had no knowledge of the torture method being used by its rangers. It says an aggressive militarized approach to protecting wildlife is instilled from the start by the instructors, usually white and from Israel, France, or South Africa. A poacher is the enemy who must be neutralized, who worked for Gambara National Park. I won't try to pronounce the names, so you'll have to excuse me, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. African Parks said that Cole, Iowa, was dismissed for poaching a buffalo and a warthog while on patrol. African Parks prides to having a business approach to conservation, which was one of the reasons Van Beeman decided to look closer at its ambitions, structures, and methods. Pay deals included bonuses in the event of an armed confrontation with poachers and confiscations of meat and weapons. African Parks confirmed primes or incentives were standard practice to motivate rangers, which again is good, but can also potentially be abused and exploited as well. So again, this is something that could go really south really quickly. And I think we see a little bit of that going on here. Van Beeman says, my investigation shows that African Parks is an opaque organization with numerous human rights allegations made against them, including torture and rape, but not open to external criticism. I think Prince Harry and others on the board should question the organization's model, its practice and governance, and reconsider their own roles. And again, this is very interesting because the other problem that this has in terms of how African Parks controls the situation is that they honestly probably don't have that much control. Not only are the Baka people in this remote region, the guards are as well. And so they have to trust that the guards are doing what they should be doing. And it's not like you can have a lot of surveillance and those sorts of things. So the guards could be going, yeah, we're 100 not doing anything they're accusing us of, and they could 100% be doing it and just don't know because again, not only does this hinder journalists' investigation, it also hinders the African Parks investigation as well. That is the truth again of the matter. And this is from Richard Eden in the Daily Mail. And I think, of course, he brings up an important point as well. So this is regarding Harry and Meghan's trip to Nigeria. He says, but I do wonder if Harry's time in Africa could be better spent addressing a scandal at a charity hit with allegations of abuse. African Parks, a conservation charity of which he is a director, is facing further accusations of human rights abuses that include extrajudicial killings and violent beatings. Claims of brutality by rangers who are jointly managed by the charity first emerged in January when front page for In the Mail on Sunday revealed the claims that armed guards had beaten, raped, and tortured Baka tribal people in the Republic of the Congo. The charity, which manages reserves in 12 African countries, although not Nigeria, is a considerable enterprise, claiming it saves wildlife by working with local communities. African Parks helps manage 1,400 guards patrolling and protecting the land, almost the size of Britain. Prince Harry, who was president for 6 years until joining the governing board of directors last year, has been effusive in his praise, saying previously the African Parks model is exactly what conservation should be about, putting people at the heart of the solution. But also, people are at the heart of the problem. But Harry, again, I think can live in a world a bit of a blinders because, like so many of the journalists that could be covering this story, he can't really get to the truth. And he doesn't seem that interested in getting there either. Harry and Meghan make a fuss about almost everything that they feel like they need to comment on. Yet they haven't really done anything here. All we have is indications that yes, oh yes, Harry did hear about this and he did, push this up the chain of command of African Parks. But he hasn't said anything else. If this is true, shouldn't Harry and Meghan, who are all against violence against people, trying to protect people online too, which It's a bit of a joke since their supporters are some of the worst offenders. Wouldn't you think they would be all over this? I mean, they've made a big point about visiting Uvalde, Texas. What about visiting this part of Africa? And yes, so yes, I know it's remote, but he's also starting to look like he really doesn't care or doesn't really seem invested into the investigation going on within this. Now, again, I'm just speculating here. I don't know any of this for sure, but there are ways Harry and Meghan could make it known that yes, we are very, very interested. We're watching this very closely. We're pushing people we know within the board to really investigate this further, but we haven't had any indication of that. And I will say as well, I was looking into this, is that there has been actually a whole series on Le Monde about this. So they have been looking at the African park situation for quite a long time. And this was one of their articles that was picked up by the Pulitzer Center. And so they're going on about the abuses that have been known actually for quite a while. They talked to a guy named Michael who recalls a time when he used to walk in the forest every day, rubbing shoulders with elephants and gorillas. But in an instant, his face hardens and his hands tighten on the armrest of his chair. It's not possible anymore. I'm very afraid to go there, even to harvest wild mangoes. 74, the patriarch of Kika PK14, which is not a real name, if you notice. So again, if I put this into Google Maps right now, which I will, I probably won't get anything. But that is literally the name of the place where he lives. Nope, can't find it. That is how, again, exceedingly remote places. Exceedingly remote places. A small hamlet in the northeastern Cameroon on the southern border with Congo Brazzaville. The camp is populated by Baka, an indigenous people commonly known as pygmies, a term they consider derogatory, live from hunting, fishing, and gathering in the forest. So again, these are very primitive people. In the straw-roofed shed open of their four winds, Zamun and Michael and a few of the inhabitants have gathered anger as roaring. Baka people depend on the forest. We use it to eat, to heal ourselves, and even for our traditional rites. But we no longer access it. Some are afraid or threatened being beat up or thrown in jail. Marshall Babia, just 18 years old, sums up the general mood. We'd rather die than go there to the Lobiki National Park. So this particular park is actually not under the control of African parks, but I think this gives you an understanding too. This is a larger issue. It's not just African parks, it's just a larger issue overall. And one again that Harry could be the champion of here, because him and Meghan want to champion the downtrodden. It seems like they want to lift up the small voices. Why not lift that up here? So this indicates too that African parks is part of the larger problem. And just to give you an idea, so this is the area in the Republic of the Congo where African parks has control. And again, you can see, we're just going to zoom in here. I just see treetops. I don't really see, do I see any villages? I thought I maybe saw a village. Do I see a village? I don't see a village. So there could be villages underneath the trees. They could be, we have some, those are clouds. Those are clouds. But again, this gives you an idea. These are incredibly remote regions of the world. So given all this, what does this tell us about Harry? Because it does tell us something really rather interesting. So this is a conversation he had, and it was reported by Hello Magazine. This was when they were right before their polo event. It was somewhat recently that he did this interview, and it was very interesting. Yeah, I think it was right before polo. What he said, because you could just tell this guy has a very romanticized notion and not really one you could say necessarily totally connected to reality about what is going on within Africa in some regions, because he could have something to say about African parks, but he doesn't really, and it shows here.
Africa's in my heart. Africa's in my soul. I first went there when I was 12, 13 years old. And after so many years, I wanted to give back to it because it had given me so much.
So it's in his heart. It's in his soul. Yes. But is he really obviously seeing what's going on within African parks, as organization he's connecting with? I don't know necessarily if he does.
The vast open space, the cultures, the communities, the people, the wildlife, just the freedom. Was a huge piece.
So Harry's there very much talking from his personal perspective. The freedom, all the things. I was like, I've been to Africa, Harry, and I've been to very remote regions of Africa. And I don't know if freedom necessarily is what I would call it. That is what he's experienced. So again, it's all about his perspective of Africa, not really what's actually going on with people in Africa. I think he's very, very disconnected from that.
Of why I loved Africa so much. And we call it Sentebali. In Sesotho, the local language, it means forget me not. And it's really focused on ensuring that the younger generation are quite literally not forgotten.
But he's obviously missing the irony that he's kind of seemingly to forget the Baka people.
And both Prince Seto's mother and my mother had a strong focus on HIV and AIDS, but also of the younger generation, because it's their futures that are being stolen from them.
And again, this is happening to the Baka people, but it's not just their future, it's their present and somewhat their past that's being stolen away from them by these parks and the guards. And again, this is a larger issue. As we saw, this is something that extends beyond African parks. And again, something Harry could talk about. But again, you get the feeling, and again, I hate to say this, but he has sort of a white savior notion of Africa in a lot of ways.
And at the heart of Sentebali, what we've always believed is that every single young person should have a chance at a better future.
And I think that's entirely true. Obviously, people should have a better chance of a future, but sometimes having a better chance at the future starts with understanding the present and understanding the reality of a situation, which I don't think Harry totally gets. I think Harry, most of the time he's been an actor in Africa, has very much lived within the parks, within the safari parks that cater to usually pretty wealthy people. So he has that notion of Africa. He doesn't have the broader notion of Africa, I think, in a lot of ways. Now, again, that's my personal opinion. But as somebody who has actually been to Africa, let me show you some of my pictures from the region. And I was in some pretty remote places. Let's see. This picture is from an airplane that I took. I was in Uganda. You can just see lots of empty space, a little village down here, but again, very, you could say, underdeveloped region in a lot of ways. I don't think a lot of these people, I mean, again, it's hard to even, this is just from a phone, so it's not very great, but it's hard to even find, hotels in certain places and stuff like that because they simply don't exist. There's not even the infrastructure. So this was scrawled on a building, I believe in Karamoja, which is up in the north. And there's a church here. You can see guns, people shooting at people running. And it says mom down here, ball, pot. It's a very odd little thing. And I saw it on the side of the building and I really wish I had asked, what is this all about? Because clearly they were talking about something that was quite serious, yet you also have some banal things over here too. And so this is a place where people experience definitely violence and instability in a lot of places that are not, you could say, more carefully controlled by the government. I remember when I was in Uganda, you would see the cops, the military, they would ride around and there would be like 10 guys in the back of a truck on guns, and they were, the security of the city. This was in the major cities, but this doesn't really exist in these more remote regions. So this was in a refugee camp. These are mostly South Sudanese citizens. You can see UNHCR over there. And so this land was basically nothing until they put the refugees there. It's essentially nothing. And people ended up building up mud huts, basically, is what they ended up building up. And so they come there with literally absolutely nothing. They were escaping war. These are, again, South Sudanese in Uganda. And so they were escaping the conflict there. There's a lot of instability in their country. So this is like a processing facility. So all these people had to be processed. They were given a minimal amount of food. And I just don't think Prince Harry really goes to these places. And you'll have to forgive me. I don't know quite where this is at, but with the gentleman with that here, I'm going to guess these are the refugee camps. So this is literally nothing. I mean, if you could call this freedom, I don't know if that was what you would call this. To me, yes, you could say free, but you are also living by the land. There's just not much around. You live literally, they literally create the homes from the mud and materials around them. And so this is all they have. And yes, perhaps you're not under the thumb of something, but you're not really, I would say, free either. So again, I feel like Harry has a very idealized notion of what Africa is. most of Africa that he's seen is within a African park, not the real Africa. And I will say, obviously, there's a lot of different portions of Africa because obviously you have Egypt and other places where Algeria, Libya, Morocco, which are very different than in sub Saharan Africa. But I think Africa is so grand that Harry's really vision of it is something that's driven not necessarily by reality, but by his fantasy of it. And because of that, I don't think maybe even he sees the African park situation maybe the way he should, just simply because you just can't really see it. And I will add one last picture here. So I have to show this picture because this is awesome. These are cows they were moving down the road. And this was the road we were taking to get to the refugee camp. And so you can see how remote and outbacky this is. And I remember this day because we were going there. And I remember they were telling me, I think it was going to be maybe 2 hours to get where we were. And we were already, I think we were in Yumbe and we had to get all the way over to this region. And I wanna say it was hour and a half, 2 hours to get there. And, you know, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing there. And so it's like so worried about bathrooms. That was my greatest. And there was a place at the refugee camp where they had actual bathrooms. And I was like, "Oh, those might not be so bad." And then our guide went in there and she's like, "No, they're not good." I was like, "Okay." I was like, thank goodness I could hold it. I would, like, not drink a lot of water because I was, like, legitimately worried 'cause there's nothing there. They were labeled bathrooms for, like, the staff, but can't read, and then they use them, and so they were using them. It was I was telling you right now, guys, it was, like, spray painted on the building for staff, and nobody was really following that. So, because of that, again, these again, very remote regions, very, very remote communities. And then just one last picture, because I think again, this is awesome to share if you just haven't ever seen something like this. And so these are a couple of kids, these are in a refugee camp, and this is how they get their water. They literally you can see it actually coming out down here. There's water coming out of this little spout, and that's what they do. The more people they get, the more wells they have to build, and so this is just a different world, and I think a different world than what Harry has. This is, again, even very different than what's going on with the Baka people and everything, but I just wanted to show you guys these because Harry is telling you one thing, but I think the reality is something else, and I think once you know and understand that, his comments sort of rub you the wrong way. At least they do for me, because I feel like you don't know real Africa, Harry. It just doesn't sound like you do. It sounds like you live in a very wealthy person's world of Africa, not real Africa. So, guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of this story. Do you think Harry will ever be held to account for this or African parks? Or I just worry that this story might be sort of shoved under the rug and forgotten because unfortunately there's just not really a good way to verify and report on this story. So, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.